that we held throughout the country. And what was the purpose? When we received the presidency, our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency, in Brazil, said the G20 presidency of South Africa is going to be a people's-driven G20, so that it speaks to your ordinary person. And we stuck to that program. Hence, you saw we are the only second country in the history of the G20 to have what we call a social summit. The social summit means you have consulted your ordinary people, your non-governmental organizations, everyone. Then you come up with a declaration of what have you picked up on the ground. That was the declaration that was given to President Ramaphosa, driven by by the ordinary people, and then he presented it to the G20. So that has been a lot of hard work. But secondly, we said our presidency is going to look at the issue of solidarity, equality, sustainability. That is exactly what we presented as the gist of the declaration that we presented. Out of that, they realize that we are representing the aspirations of the global south, representing the aspirations of the less economies, representing the aspirations most of Africa, in the sense that Africa, one, it's rich in minerals. So when we put the issue of beneficiation and so forth, it speaks to them to say it's so rich in minerals, yet it's so poor. What is the problem? Countries are not benefiting from what is that, which makes Africa to be, of a lesser thing. Two, that beneficiation, if the benefit, is it sustainable? Then we wanted also programs that will make sure that it's sustainable to take out Africa and the global south from the levers of poverty. Three, we said solidarity. South Africa is known worldwide for standing for the rule of law, for democracy, and also standing for principles. Hence, we are known all over the world for our principle, like the declaration today spoke about the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. And if you remember, South African President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, went to Ukraine and spoke to President Zelensky because we believe in a negotiated settlement. He also went to Moscow, spoke to President Putin because we believe in a negotiated settlement. At the same time, we are actively participating in the conflict in the DRC, in the Lakes region. We are participating in that. Thirdly, we are also having taken a stand against what is happening in the Middle East, the issue of Palestine and Israel. So those things, they found expression in the declaration, and all the countries, all the more than 40 countries that are here, except one, have endorsed that. So it was only Argentina that raised whatever they raised. So they have adopted that. That's where in the history of the G20, I think it's the second time that a declaration is adopted by consensus on the very first day. So that is a culmination of the hard work of our presidency.
Over the presidency, which, as you mentioned, started last year, 2020.
Exactly.
Now, going forward, accountability, time frames, and ensuring that everything that is discussed and agreed upon here is then filtered through on the whole continent, not only the continent but the rest of the world. How do we ensure that this is then taken forward and there are deliverables put in place?
Thank you for that question. The G20 is a consensus-driven formation. That's why no lesser person than the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres, yesterday, appealed to the G20 leaders to say, because the decisions that we are taking are by consensus, let us make sure that we commit ourselves to implementing. So that is what we have appealed. And we have no doubt that this will be implemented. Why? Because as part of our presidency, we have been involved at the technical levels, regionally and continentally, with different bodies. That's why 50 countries have signed the implementation protocols that we have put. So that is a spin-off of the G20, but also a commitment.
Going forward, everyone is asking the question. We touched on it briefly in the beginning of our discussion, but what is going to happen now? Because with the relations and where, for lack of a better word, emotions when it comes to the US president and how he deals with a country like South Africa, and going forward and the handover, what is going to happen going forward? Because a big role has to be played by South Africa going forward for the G20 that's happening in the US next year.
Thank you very much. I think I couldn't have put it better. You said it, emotions. So as South Africa, we said we are not going to be driven by emotions. We're going to go to the content and the gist. Maybe let me indicate to you that in most of the technical meetings that we are hosting, the United States was participating. So that is the content that we're concentrating on. But secondly, the United States themselves reached out to South Africa to say, can you make accommodation for us through your diplomatic protocols so that we can attend the closing date of the G20. So that means that they recognize the presidency of the G20 from South Africa. However, the issue was at the level. They sort of juniorize the people who have to represent them. So this one, the sessions that we're having today and tomorrow, are at the leaders level. It's a summit of leaders. Hence, we couldn't accommodate those junior people. They were not leaders. However, as a country, the ceremonial component was supposed to happen here. Now the declaration is adopted. We are going to respect the U.S. It's a show of respect that you are sending a person of this level. We will equally reciprocate, give you a person of that level. So that's why we are going to present to them sometimes this week to the same level that they are sending to us. If they send a DDG, we give a DDG. If they send a DG, we also give a DG. So it's a respect because we reciprocate.
Well, William, it's been a pleasure. We have run out of time, and I wish we could continue this conversation because there is a lot to unpack. But I need to say this: congratulations on hosting an amazing platform. The G20 is by no feat a small platform, and as you see, I think the excitement, you can still see the media center is still packed. Nobody wants to leave because they want as much information as they can to just keep it moving forward to the people who are waiting and watching to find out what else comes out of the G20 in South Africa.
Thank you very much, but we want to also thank the media because you reach all the corners of the globe where people cannot have ordinarily access this, and we thank you very much.
Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you very much.
That is William Baloyi, Chief Director for Government Communication and Information here in South Africa, joining us on the line. We're going to take a quick break. We go back and just stay with us, though. There is a lot that we are going to be unpacking. We're speaking to a number of different people who have been here and have been following the G20 since its inception, and also even the G7. So we do have a guest who's going to unpack all of that for us and what this means and how just the layman can understand what this means for them as individuals. You're listening to Africa Updates, coming to you live on Channel Africa.
Chaque vendredi, à partir de 17h, heure d'Afrique centrale, nous les dernières mises à jour, les discussions clés et les idées des dirigeants les plus influents du monde. c'est votre chance de rester informé des décisions qui façonnent notre avenir mondial. Connectez-vous chaque vendredi à partir de 17h, heure d'Afrique centrale, sur www.channelafrica.co.za ou encore sur l'application SABC+. Je veux en Afrique défendre l'Afrique par la solidarité, l'égalité et la durabilité, uniquement sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine. Annika Londi sur Channel Africa.
Comment est-ce que les militants et sympathisants du parti Les Transformateurs ont-ils réagi face à la condamnation de Succès Masra?
La condamnation de Succès Masra ne nous a pas surpris et les militants transformateurs ont été bouleversés et indignés étant donné que le verdict est un verdict lourd, illégal, injuste et donc face à la répression dans laquelle le peuple tchadien est confronté, les militants transformateurs se sont résignés de ne pouvoir pas sortir manifester. Et donc, c'est une situation totalement absurde pour un pays. Et aujourd'hui, nous célébrons le 11 août, fête de l'indépendance. On pensait que le verdict allait être plus ou moins clément, mais le verdict est sévère.
Annika Londi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Global leaders, African insights. Follow the G20 summit with Channel Africa as it happens.
We're coming to you live from the Nesrec Center in Johannesburg, in the south of Johannesburg. We're coming to you live from the Nesrec Center in Johannesburg, in the south of Johannesburg, where the G20 summit is underway. A hive of activity, a lot happening here on the ground. And we are coming to you live on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. I'm Lulu Gaboo, and I tell you, it's a very exciting time. And just to be here, it is you get to see a number of individuals that are experts in their fields. And one of these individuals is Professor John Curtin, who is the founder and director of a G20 research group at the University of Toronto. Prof, good afternoon. Well, good evening. I beg your pardon. And thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Well, it's great to be with you and all of your listeners.
Now, Prof, just talk to us about your research group and you know how it all came about. And you were mentioning earlier that you know you've been doing research and following the G20, and you know take us through that process and how we are here present day today.
Well, it was a Canadian, our finance minister, who invented the idea of a G20 and teamed up with his American colleague, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, to actually bring it to life. So it's the only international institution of a global relevance and reach that Canada really invented. So we were there from the start because, of course, it was authorized by the G7 summit in Cologne, Germany, and we long had a G7 research group, so we just expanded to absorb the rest of the G7. And since the president of South Africa had often been invited to the G7 summits, and because, of course, our two leaders met every 2 years at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, well, and because Africa is really a continental-sized Canada. Half of it speaks English, half of it speaks French.
Yes.
We felt right at home, and that's why Canada was the first country in the world to make Nelson Mandela a Canadian citizen of its own.
Well, Prof, take us through the research that you have now worked on and put together over the years. Earlier on, we bumped into you and you gave us a booklet, and I've got the booklet here in front of me, which is the G20, the Johannesburg Summit 2025. And just going through this booklet, it's got so much information.
Yeah. If the G20 as an international institution had a permanent fixed secretariat, international bureaucrats, a building, for every summit, the secretariat would produce
a background book to tell the journalists and everybody else what's going on, that have a website that goes on and on and on,
Yes.
year after year. But they don't, so we do. We have our own G20 website, www.utoronto,
Okay.
contraction of the University of Toronto.ca for Canada. We produced the background book, and the opening section is all of the leaders get to tell the story about what they want this summit to do. And President Ramaphosa wrote the opening article. But our own experts then say, okay, what have G20 summits done in the past on, well, all of the key subjects, macroeconomic policy, climate change, health, gender equality, and the focus there is not just what they said and not what just they agreed to do in the communique, we will, we shall, but did they keep their promises when they went home? Did they comply with their commitments? Did they keep their promises? Did they deliver their decisions? So we have to watch all of the G7 countries and the G20 ones the following 365 days of the year to see what they're doing. Are they keeping the words?
And
So we're the
what are
global
they
governance
doing? What are
auditor
they
generals.
doing? Are they keeping their words? Are they following through with their deliverables, or is it just it becomes a talk shop and?
Oh, it's far more than a talk shop.
Yeah.
They do talk, and they write down what they said they talked about, and we measure that. That's why getting a declaration is so important, as we did here. And then they make decisions, and that's important. And they do deliver. The average over all the summits, all of the subjects, is 71%. A B minus, if you use that grading system. So much better than, well, nothing. Much better than, well, let's say the United Nations Security Council, right? Which is vastly lower. And what we've seen most recently is that the commitments they made last year when Lula hosted the G20 summit in Rio, Brazil. Well, we've just finally did the arithmetic, and compliance with those commitments is 70%. So at the average. And the big surprise is that the highest complier for the first time ever up there is South Africa, right? So typically it's the United Kingdom, one of our mother countries, the European Union, but now South Africa is up there. So if you want to point to a country in the G20 from the global south, well, South Africa is the brightest star in the firmament. South Africa was already leading before the Johannesburg summit in keeping the promises that it and all the other G20 leaders made at Rio.
Yeah.
Last
So how do we get the other members of the G20, the other leaders, to meet to go over the threshold of 70 or 71%?
That's right. Key question. And we know that 71% is not nearly enough. So what causes compliance, and then how do you correct it? And one of the strongest findings is hold ministerial meetings, many, before and after the summit. If you do it before the summit, as South Africa did, then the ministers who actually have to put into effect what their leaders promised from on high, they know from the very beginning that they can do it, how to do it, and they feel part of it. They have buy-in. So after the leaders make the promise, they say, hey, I got my leader to do it, and all the other G21 too. So boy, oh boy, I'd better comply with their promises because they're really my own promises too. So South Africa, about 22 ministerial meetings on a broad range of subjects. And I think that's one of the reasons we can look forward to even better compliance with the priority commitments made here at Johannesburg, even though, well, our friends in the United States, under Donald Trump, they got the lowest score ever. It was only 27% with their Rio commitments. I wouldn't want to take a report card like that home from school when I was a kid and show my parents. But even so, I think with the boost from South Africa and from it other members of the Global South, I think we'll see pretty good compliance when we talk again next year in Miami, if you're there.
Well, you know what, Prof? Now, speaking of Miami, speaking of U.S. President Donald Trump and how he's handled the whole South Africa G20, and now there's a situation of the handover being done at a junior level, and relations going forward, especially now with the declaration having been made and being the first point of call that was mentioned by the President of South Africa this morning. What do you foresee with regards to the relations between South Africa and the U.S.? Yes, there were people here representing the U.S. And not a picture that President Donald Trump wanted the world to know. But they were here, they were present, and now the way forward, the handover, 2026 is in Miami.
Yeah, I think the tide has already turned. Let's go back. Donald Trump said, I'm not going to go, I'm going to send my vice president. Then he said, I'm not going to send my vice president, I'm going to send no U.S. government official. And oh, by the way, I think South Africa should be kicked out of the G20 for good because of this bizarre idea that it was engaging in genocide against the whites. I don't know really any South Africa. Oh, where in my country is that happening? It's the biggest. It was just bizarre. Yeah. But already before the summit even started, he said, okay, I'm not going to be embarrassed to have it hand over to my presidency to an empty chair. So I'm going to send a few low-ranking officials to actually have the baton tossed, and that meeting is going to happen now at an equal level over at the DIRCO headquarters in the coming weeks. But he also has said some of his priorities for Miami are very close to the Johannesburg ones. Energy security, critical minerals, right? As well as, entrepreneurship and such things. And he is started to actually put U.S. dollars, government dollars on the table for part of the pledging to the summit the day before this one. It was for the Global Fund against AIDS. TB, and malaria. And of course, South Africa is the country that suffers from AIDS more than any other country in the world. So he said all the nasty things about South Africa, but if you follow the money, he's actually putting U.S. government dollars to help South Africans live, be healthy against their number one. Nobody thought he would be a leader in global health in any way, but I think he's hearing from his people back home, including his base. And we do know from the story of Global Fund that it was Republicans, President Bush, PEPFAR, all those Christians that vote Republican, but have read the Bible and believe in it. The missionary instinct, if you will. So there's a great American history. And then, of course, when you look at all of those Americans who vote, I think of Barack Obama, whose ancestors came from
Kenya,
Africa.
from Africa.
Boy, Donald Trump is now so low in the polls, he needs every Afro-American vote he can get. And that'll be truer as we move towards Miami. The U.S. midterm elections are going to be bad news for him.
Yeah, well, Prof, there's a lot to unpack. What more are you looking forward to? Today was just day one. There's still tomorrow.
I'd like to see at the end of the summit, the leaders promise again to do what they've repeatedly promised to do at almost every summit since 2009. End fossil fuel subsidies in the medium term, which means about 5 years. So they should have done it by 2014. They didn't, and they kept promising. And the last version of the declaration that I've seen, they said, we will eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. But there was no deadline. So, what, in the next 1,000 years? No. They should say it. We'll do it by, okay, let's give them another 5 years from now, by 2030, when the Millennium Development Goals are due to be realized. And there's a lot of work for a lot of countries to do. I think everyone has sinned in different ways.
Yes. Well, Prof, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making time for us on Africa Update.
Okay, always a pleasure talking to my soulmates in South Africa.
Thank you for that. And we love having you here. So hopefully we'll be in Miami next year, Tracy. Hopefully we'll be in Miami next year and have a good chat and touch base on what has happened and, find out whether the numbers have increased in terms of that threshold over the 71%, and not only South Africa being in the high numbers. Thank you, Prof, for your time. That's Professor John Curtin, and he is the founder and director of G20 Research Group at the University of Toronto in Canada, joining us here live at the Nazareth Centre, where the G20 summit is underway.
Your favorite songs, your favorite stories is watching Johannesburg. Leaders from the planet's biggest economies gather to make decisions that shape nations, markets, and futures. You already know Channel Africa will be right there, bringing you the conversations, insights, and analysis that matter.
The best is yet to come.
The G20 Summit from the 22nd to the 23rd of November. As it happens, from an African perspective, stay tuned to Channel Africa and get all the G20 analysis. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update, only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is 7:35 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg, and we are at the Nazareth Centre. We're coming to you live from Johannesburg, and we are at the Nazareth Centre, where the G20 summit is underway. It is the day one of the summit, and I can tell you now, people are not going home. The media is still here because there are still a number of discussions that are underway with the leaders still being here. And we have a lot of unpacking to do. And we're coming to you live on DSTV's Audio Bouquet Channel 802, on OpenView Channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Now, Elizabeth Sidropoulos is the Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs, and she's led this since 2005, with over 2 decades of experience in the field of politics and international relations, and her expertise lies in South Africa's foreign policy, South-South cooperation and the role of emerging powers in Africa. Elizabeth, good evening, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good evening. It's good to be with you.
You've had a busy day. You've had a busy day. I was watching you earlier, and I thought, okay, we're probably going to be having a conversation later on today, because what you were saying, explosive stuff. I mean, we saw declaration happening, whether intentionally, unintentionally, but it was all good for us because it was an exciting moment for South Africa and for the world to realize that South Africa's here, the G20 is here, and President Cyril Ramaphosa and his team are on a mission to getting things done. Your take?
No, absolutely. I think there was a lot of concern earlier this week about whether we would be able to get a declaration. We saw the statements coming out of the US, or the tweets, or whatever they're called, coming out of the US. And of course, it would have been the very first time since the G20 has been at leaders level that there would not have been a leaders declaration if that panned out. But I mean, there was a lot of work that went into getting a consensus document, which was finally signed off, so to speak, by the Sherpas yesterday morning. We all saw the reports. It was, I think, a lot of credit needs to go to our diplomats, to our Sherpa, our Sous Sherpa, and the entire team. The final leg of the negotiation started last Sunday and ended on Friday morning, working through the night on the last day. But what I think is also important to note there is the degree to which the other member countries, or members of the G20, because of course it includes the African Union and the European Union, came to the party. We all come from different countries, different contexts, but we all recognize that we need to achieve consensus. And so how do we achieve consensus? What are the trade-offs? And so, as with all leaders' declarations, there are trade-offs. You might say that I would have maybe liked a stronger set of commitments, concrete commitments, say on climate change or on debt. But we know at the end of the day, these are difficult. You're negotiating with 21 countries. There were also the guest countries. The importance of arriving at a consensus document, a leader's declaration, is that it shows that you can find some middle ground. In an era where everybody's going off on their own, and there's heightened geopolitical rivalry and tension, the fact that you can get a group of countries to come together and agree on a declaration, even if it is not as ambitious as in certain areas as we might have liked, I think is an extremely important message to the world that we can, if we want, work together.
And just in working together, holding each other accountable as countries, because with the African Union being present here and as a permanent member, and this is what South Africa had been pushing for some time, and it has come to fruition, holding member countries accountable, and as well just the invited countries, the African leaders who are here as per invitation, to say this is what we agreed on. Can we have accountability? Can we have time frames put in place and that sort of thing? Because this is where, then it kind of lags off, where people or leaders are not held to account.
So this is a challenge when it comes to the G20, because the G20 is not an implementing body. It doesn't have a secretariat. It's a club. It's an informal grouping in the same way that the G7 is an informal grouping, and the BRICS. The BRICS also doesn't have a secretariat. And so the leaders coming together signify political will and political commitment. But if you look at the declarations from 2008, 2009, well, there were some concrete issues, because they did deal very effectively with the global financial crisis. But as the agenda expanded, you see also, in a sense, a dilution of some of the concrete commitments that you can then hold them accountable against and that you can measure. And so even in today's declaration, it's no different. Because we are living in a world at a time when consensus is difficult to achieve, Sometimes we have to resort to language that comes from previous declarations. There is, I think, sometimes an intentionality to it being vague, because then you can get agreement. If one country, which is a fossil fuel producer, is also in the room, and another one who is a champion of green energy, you want to put in some targets around green energy for the G20, well, it's going to be really, that's when the rubber hits the road, and where your ability to find consensus becomes very difficult, because the one country sees it as a zero-sum game, or both countries may see it as a zero-sum game. And so there is an intentionality to a degree of vagueness in G20 and other similar groupings declarations, and that's what makes it really difficult to hold countries accountable.
Way forward?
I think there are a number of really innovative issues that South Africa has put on the agenda, some of which are in the declaration, some of which are referred to in the declaration, but referred to more substantive documents. And here I would like to highlight a couple. One is the inequality report. Another one is some of the recommendations that have come out of Trevor Manuel's Africa Expert Panel. There is in the Leaders' Declaration and in ministerials commitment to a process that can begin to deal with illicit financial flows. There is a proposal which wasn't adopted by consensus, but which South Africa can run with, around the establishment of a Commission on Global Public Goods. I think South Africa and the African Union need to identify, say, the top 3 priorities around some of the really interesting, what I've called the norm entrepreneurship that we've embarked in with this G20, and really try to drive them next year. And the reason I say 2 or 3 is because you can't do everything. If you're trying to do everything, nothing's going to be a priority. You need to identify 2 or 3 that you can really make some progress on this year. It doesn't mean that the others sort of remain dormant, but I think we need to commit, and we need to explore the various platforms and organizations that we can use for the relevant issues to drive them forward. We don't have to wait. We don't have to expect that there will be a statement next year that gives us the authority or gives us the permission to drive some of these things forward. We can drive them forward, and I think certainly that is the idea. And one other thing, the cost of capital issue of how African countries can really finance their development, which is also related to domestic resource mobilization. There are a group of issues that South Africa has championed this year, which we should continue to champion in all of the multilateral fora and in the regional and in the African Union.
Today was day 1, tomorrow is the final day, and a lot of work still needs to be done. Leaders doubling down with their teams, and what are you hoping will come out from there?
Well, of course, the Leaders' Declaration came out today.
Yes,
and that's usually the sort of the cherry on the top, and that's what everybody's waiting for. So that's happened. There are a number of sessions that will deal with some of the priorities that South Africa has put on the table. I think tomorrow there should be a discussion on critical minerals. I'm not quite sure the extent to which the program might have shifted now. Discussions on specific issues around just energy transition. I think, as with all big events which bring, world leaders together, this is an ideal opportunity for people to have the bilaterals. So we've already seen some bilateral meetings being held by visiting heads of state, and I think that is also important. It's about making announcements on some big initiatives. We heard from the Germans around the Compact with Africa, but it's also using it as an opportunity to have a bilateral heads of state meeting, or however brief, at a G20. We see the same thing happening at the UN General Assembly, or at in the spring or annual meetings of the World Bank and the IMF, and so that's equally important, even though it doesn't necessarily always receive the limelight. The limelight is the plenary. And
I can't speak to you and not just touch on U.S. U.S. relations, South Africa relations going forward, especially after I don't even know what to call it anymore, because it is quite an interesting time, and just seeing everything just roll out, and then the declaration happening as being one of the first things to happen this morning was quite interesting.
I'm not quite sure whether we've seen any communication in the last few hours, but I think the one thing I want to emphasize here particularly is the fact that, the principle of consensus is very important for the G20. And it was built on the assumption that everybody's going to be around the table. If you voluntarily exclude yourself, you don't allow anything to proceed, you're effectively vetoing. And we're all equal in the G20, as I think the President said a couple of days ago. I mean, obviously the US has participated in some of the meetings, particularly of the finance track. But then when President Trump announced that nobody was actually going to come, then I think all of the engagements on the Leaders' Declaration came to a stop.
Yeah.
The fact that the other countries were able to sit around the table and debate things and give and take, I think was a powerful message. And I think it was a real pity that the US wasn't part of those conversations. I think the announcement by South Africa around the handover, I think it was appropriate. There's no way that a head of state is going to hand over the presidency to a junior official, to a junior, not a junior diplomat, but certainly a junior official. He doesn't have any rank. Is not a political person. He's not a president or a vice president or even a special envoy. And so that decision is entirely appropriate. And I think it indicates that, there are protocols and we observe them. We're not going to do, because there is a statement made about this is the way it's going to happen, and we know that this is not the practice, and this is actually it's an insult. That so I think the position taken by South Africa on that was correct, and we look forward to seeing the handover at Durka next week.
I like the way you say that. Well, Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
That's a pleasure.
That's Elizabeth Sidropoulos, who is the Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs, and she is joining us live here from the Nasrec Center, where the G20 summit is underway. And as you've heard, you've been with us the whole day, because we were here since 8 o'clock in the morning. A lot of excitement and a lot coming out from this summit. You're listening to Africa Update. We're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa, and it is 7:49 Central African time.
Your favorite songs. Your favorites. With gratitude for the voices, the rhythm, and the dreams that unite us all.
Roho ya Afrika inaishi katika kila hadithi tunayosimulia.
Each new day is a gift, a reminder to pause, to breathe, and to give thanks for the laughter we share and the journeys we take and the stories that shape who we are.
Cada nascer do sol, que lembre que há algo pelo qual ser grato.
La vie est un voyage, parcourons-la avec gratitude.
Channel Africa. Celebrate the beauty of life with gratitude for the voices, the rhythms, and the dreams that unite us all. This is Africa with Channel Africa, the African perspective. The G20 Summit through African eyes, live updates, and expert voices only on Channel Africa.
It is
expert voices only on Channel Africa.
It is 7:50 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from the Nasrec Center, where the G20 summit is underway, and a lot happening, with information being brought forward and being filtered through across the globe, because it's not only for South Africa and the African continent, but it is across the globe. Busi Khatebe is from SABC Digital News, and she joins us here. Busi, it's been a long day.
It has, Lulu. It has been a very long day. Good evening to you and
Good
the listeners.
evening. You know what? It's been a long but exciting day. A lot has happened. And talk to us about what's been trending.
So what's been trending is actually the G20 South Africa, G20 Summit, and then the G20, as well as President Cyril Ramaphosa. They've been trending. People have been commending the president for bringing such a wonderful event to witness it in our country and the continent, a first for the continent. So people are excited to see world leaders descend and seeing them walking on the red carpet, the rolling coverage. So people are excited to see that.
Now, you're speaking of that, and there were mixed feelings and mixed emotions when South Africans started to see the preparations that were being done, and some of the road closures. I remember last week there were some road closures last weekend because there were practice runs and dry runs, and people were quite upset because they felt that they were being infringed upon. And just to see that turnaround is quite interesting, because now it started to feel like people are understanding what the G20 is and what it means for them as a country.
Yes.
And the continent, I guess.
That's true, Lulu. You're seeing people, yes, they were frustrated. But, before they were complaining about a lack of communication.
Yes.
You'd see it on social media saying there's a lack of communication about the alternative routes. Some saying at this point we're not going to go anywhere, just close all the roads. But because, the different departments on social media kept showing them alternative routes, where to go, they started to appreciate that. And also, there was some distrust about the summit coming here. Some people saying, with the fixing of the roads and the lights, saying, so government can actually do this. Why is it not happening on a daily basis? But someone was saying, you know what, enough with that. We'll have a family meeting after the guests have left.
Yes.
Right now, let's be excited. Let's celebrate this moment where policies are made in this country, on our continent, that will affect the continent, such as climate change,
yes.
trade, things like that.
Now, after the declaration this morning, whether it was intentional or not intentional, it was exciting news for South Africa, and I guess the African continent, and anyone who was interested. Was there a shift when you say President Ramaphosa has been commended by people on social media? Was there a shift and a better understanding of what that declaration was about?
There was certainly a shift, Lulu, because people were skeptical because the United States said they were not coming. So that also trended the U.S. boycott. And so people were like, will this even happen? What will happen when the big country, because it's a big powerhouse country, is not here? Will the declaration be adopted? And when they saw that it was unanimously, the majority, obviously with some maybe not agreeing, but the majority signing in the declaration and adopting it, people were like, this is possible. And they were even saying, Matamela, President, you're doing well. They even said this reminds them of the 2010 World Cup when it was in South Africa, that having that united feeling, having people being excited and seeing so many people, as you mentioned, it's been a long day, but we have over 1,000, I hear, media people, local and international.
And a lot of them are still here, which is quite interesting because, leaders have left and come back, and it's when a leader comes through. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, arrived earlier, and literally it was a hustle and bustle. People the media just wanting to crowd him and speak to him and find out, what was coming up next and what they should look forward to.
That's true. Even with the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Mangwenya, every time he walked, there was a swarm of media around him because they had so many questions. And he came out at the time when they just said that they have adopted the declaration.
Yes.
So they had so many questions to ask. Lulu, they asked questions such as, was Ukraine the focus when they adopted? And he said, not just Ukraine, conflict all over the world, including, DRC, including in Sudan and
the
Gaza.
Middle East.
Yes. So it's not just Ukraine, and that the European leaders, they said that they will have side relations and talks during the G20 summit to map a way forward for the Ukraine.
And just for interest's sake, what are you finding in terms of, the response or the reactions on digitally? Are you finding that it's young people that are becoming more interested? Is it the older people? What are you finding there on that front?
It's more of the young people, because someone did actually say, what about the old people in the rural areas? Do they even know what's going on? You find that some people thought there wasn't enough information, but also you have PANSALB, the Pan South African Languages Board. Yes. They've been releasing G20 summit leaflets in the different languages. They had it in isiNdebele and isiXhosa, making it more inclusive so that people can actually understand. But it's mostly young people, older young people, urging the youth to take note of what's happening and telling them that, this is showing you that decisions and policies are not made in isolation. And whatever is decided on will impact Africa.
Well, Busi, you've had a long day. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and all the information that you're putting out there. It's quite interesting to see it unfolding and just how people are now more interested. And everyone wants to know what time it's ending tonight and tomorrow, when does it start? And, when do we start seeing the leaders leaving? So this is also quite an interesting time for everyone who is here.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you for having me.
That is Busi Khadebe, who is from SABC Digital News, and talking everything that's trending with regards to the G20 summit happening here in South Africa. And it is a leaders summit. There is a bit of noise coming out there. And, I must tell you, it's apart from the G20 summit, there is also excitement when it comes to the rugby with the Springboks on the field. And, the media are literally, some of them are standing up now watching that. And it's quite interesting to see with all that's happening. There is also that interest of entertainment with South Africa against Ireland, which is a match that is underway. And as we wrap Africa Update, I know normal time is noon from 12 to 1 o'clock, but today it's all things G20. We were here at the Nerve Center of the G20, which is the Nasrec Summit, the Nasrec Center, where the G20 Summit is underway, and a lot happening again tomorrow. Today was just day one, and tomorrow is day two. Channel Africa will continue giving you updates. We are going to have a team on the ground with updates with regards to what is happening and what decisions are going to be made going forward. It's been a great one. Continue with us on all our social media platforms and just let us know your thoughts and what you feel should have been covered or shouldn't have been covered at this summit. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back in studio as Africa Update on Monday, 12 to 1. Continue with us on our socials and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Find the latest Oasis podcast on www. We'll host the G20 Summit at the Nasrec Expo Center near Soweto. And Channel Africa will be right there to bring you live updates, interviews, and real-time insights from the main venue. And so, our regular lineup will be adjusted just a little bit for this weekend to accommodate the G20. On Saturday, the 22nd of November, the Oasis will broadcast for 2 hours. Out and About takes a break for a full look at the G20. After Africa Chart Toppers, our news and current affairs team will bring you special live broadcasts in 5 different languages directly from Nasrec. And normal programming will resume at 8 p.m. Central African Time. And then on Sunday, the 23rd of November, the Oasis will also broadcast for 2 hours. Tech Africa steps aside for our news and current affairs teams to bring you special live broadcasts in 5 different languages. Then, Planting the Seed resumes from 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. Central African Time. Channel Africa, your window to the continent, connecting you to the world in an African perspective.
Caleidoscópio África. Do Serviço de Língua Portuguesa de Canal África. Caleidoscópio África. Caleidoscópio África. Da África para o mundo na perspectiva africana. Está na companhia do Serviço de Língua Portuguesa